Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our webinar Wednesday on a Monday. So happy Monday. We're excited to have another webinar this month. We had one last Wednesday with Rebecca Hager talking about working with youth in middle school. That was a really good conversation there. And we're really excited today to have Sam Lawman, our animal science specialist, to talk about getting ready for your county fairs and achievement days, something that's always on our mind and we always need some refreshers and have questions with that. So we're excited to have her back today. And because we know that when that comes along, summer is almost here. So exciting to have her. And so this will be our last one before the summer. We will come back together in August. And in August on the 13th, we'll have Brianna Kaiser talking about working with high school age youth and keeping that group involved. And on the August the 27th, those are both Wednesdays. Rochelle Veteran is going to talk about how to use the brand new volunteer handbook. So that'll get you going for your new 4-H year. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Sam. And if you have questions, just put them in the chat box and we can get to those as we see them or at the end. Sam?
Awesome. Well, thank you, Megan. Excited to see 53. I was going to say 52, and then somebody else just hopped on, which is awesome. Um, a lot of this that we're going to go through today is going to seem like old, obvious tricks, things that you're like, well, of course, we do that every year. That's something I always think about. I don't even have to think about it. But for those of you that are new or just going into an achievement day or a county fair, or if this is not your first language, some of us grew up like me, county fair is my first language. That's where everything I love kind of takes place. So for me, it's just common knowledge, but for a lot of us, it's not. It's brand new information. There can be things that we're not expecting or anticipating. So we're going to go through some of those, and then we're going to go through really focusing on animal science side. So if you are not a livestock person, if that's not your passion or your background, hopefully today I can answer a lot of those questions for you and we can work through some of those scenarios together. Um, for those of you that have been on this webinar in the past, a lot of it'll be refresher. I didn't change a whole heck of a lot, but we are going to kind of whip through my slides a little faster than I normally do so that I can give plenty of time. We're going to talk about livestock IDs, livestock ID reports, how to run those in 4-H online, and what you're actually looking for. Since I know that's a big topic this year, I want to make sure we have plenty of time to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and share my slides. I'm hoping it works. Megan, does it look like a yellow and green slide up there?
Yeah, that looks good, Sam.
Perfect. Hooray. Okay, we'll start there. So we're going to start getting ready for fairs and achievement days. And so whether you have a large fair that is run primarily by volunteers, or if you have a smaller achievement day where a lot of this is going to feel like it falls on you, there's a lot of preparation that goes into it. And even more so, I think, are the things that we do every year that we don't necessarily think about. So if we think about people coming into your county for your achievement day or your fair, there's so many things you do every year that you don't write down just because it's common knowledge. And so making sure that we can sort through all those is kind of important. All right. I don't think my QR code wasn't functioning this morning. Hopefully it gets better as the day goes on. But a lot of the times I feel like as we're going through a county fair and achievement day, our go-to is just to routinely say, everything is fine. It's fine. We'll get through it. It's okay. Um, and so I always like to start off kind of this session on, we'll use the chat box instead. Just drop in what is your biggest fear with your county fair or achievement day. This can be parents will yell at me, I'll forget a ribbon, there'll be a tornado, my judge won't show up, anything. But if you can fill the comment box, just what is your biggest fear? Maybe it's happened, maybe it hasn't, but what are those things that really make you nervous about achievement days? Oh, Hayden, that's okay. You get to go into this fearless. We'll count that as a really good thing. They'll come soon enough. Too many things happen, forget something, judges cancel last minute, conflict, absolutely. And so a lot of these things we can't always prepare for, like acts of God, insurance claims, things like that that take place. We can't necessarily prepare enough for and get and reduce our risk to zero. But there are a lot of things that we can do that can minimize some of the big scary things. Oh, Monica, bees 2 years ago. Yep, that is new. Absolutely. Those that were in my preparing for like disasters at Achievement Days during spring conference. I think my first year supervising in Minnesota, one of the counties called because a person had passed away inside a ticket booth. So like there are things that are just not on bingo cards that you're like, I have no idea how to handle this. And so we can't prevent those, but hopefully we can prevent some of the minor things. So when the big things come up, we can work through them a little quicker. So the first thing I want to talk about when it comes to our fairs and achievement days is what's your role? And this will look different depending on what county you're in or what fair you're working with. Um, but as you come into the fair achievement day season, first question is who can you ask to clarify your role? So this could be your district director. It could be someone like myself or Megan or Leanne. It can be other people within your office. So if you're an administrative assistant, asking a couple of the agents how they see your role. And then agents, you in return, asking your admin staff, hey, what did the person before me do? Or what do you see as my role versus your role? How do we work on this together? And then, of course, taking into consideration like our fair boards or ag societies, our 4 H councils, what do they see as your role? And so it doesn't mean that's cemented in, that is your role for life, because we can't be everything for everyone all the time. But that does give you a little bit more context and idea into what they may be expecting. Is this part of my job? Some of those crazy things that may come up if you ask the fair board, all right, what do you all see me doing this year? How best can I help serve the fair? If one of their responses is, you know what, we could really use some help with the late night shift in the beer garden. Nope, not necessarily part of your job. Now, if you choose to take that on as a private citizen, that's totally different. But just being able to make sure that those key things or those requests all connect back to our jobs. And then who can help or provide me with more information on this? Again, you've got your fair boards, the volunteers that have been there for years, some of your new volunteers and families. Lean heavily on your other office staff. If you're in a county by yourself, you're at a bit of a disadvantage. But I know when I moved into a county for the very first time, asking my admin assistant, who had already been there for 30 years, was like opening this amazing what to do, what not to do booklet of information. So make sure you ask those questions. And then that last piece of, am I actually the one in charge? That can be kind of a scary thought. If something goes wrong, or if decisions need to be made, am I actually the one in charge? And it'll depend on the situation. So like things like those insurance claims within our 4-H program, absolutely, you're the go-to, you're the one in charge. Things on judges, stuff like that. Now bees, if they're at a county fair, hopefully that's also a UN fair board situation of, okay, this is at our facility, so we need to figure out how to handle this. And so I saw Andrea had asked a question. I want to make sure I don't skip over it here. For those of us that are new to the inner workings for 4-H and come in from a parent standpoint, what's the difference between achievement days and the fair itself? Excellent question. So I came from Minnesota's 4-H system where achievement days aren't a thing. They don't exist. So I will give my interpretation of what I've learned over the past 10 years and how I see a difference in the two. And you may see them slightly different, but just know that as I use them in context, this is kind of what I'm thinking. So for the most part, our achievement days are standalones. So they may not be part of like a larger county fair, missing that carnival, the food booth, the food station. The achievement day is solely focused on our 4-H members. So that could be the livestock shows, static exhibitations, those things taking place within a day or 2 days, solely focused on the 4-H program, as opposed to our county fairs, where some of those kind of achievement days are filtered within the fair. The fair includes, yep, the big public viewings, other events that are taking place that you're scheduling around, the carnivals, the food vendors, working with a fair board, kind of that greater, larger scale event. Right. So today, just a reminder of what we're going to go through. We're going to go through ID reports in 4-H Online. I can promise this is my favorite thing I've learned to do in 4-H Online, and I have no idea how I lived without it before. How to create a successful check-in process. We're going to structure species and class orders, talk a little bit about that if you've never worked with livestock before. And then we're going to answer some of the questions like, I know I need volunteers because Rochelle and everybody else keeps telling me, build my volunteer base, but I don't know what they're actually going to be doing or how many I need. We're going to talk about that. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the, oh no, something happened, how can we go through it? So this is one of my favorite memes. I throw it out all summer long, and people get very sick of it. So just prepare to see it quite a bit. But I don't know if you know this, but 4-H is kind of a big deal. So why is our achievement days, why are our county fairs such a big deal? Why do emotions run high? Why do conflicts run high when it's only a few days a year? And my response is always, exactly, it's only a few days a year. So if we think sometimes about like sports, we have an entire season, right? We may have 20 to 25 games in a season before we get to like a tournament. Instead, we can imagine what stress and conflict would look like if instead of playing an entire football Class B season in North Dakota, we went straight to a state tournament and it was all in one day. So there are no, yep, we'll get them next time, we'll see you next week. It is all or nothing in that moment. And for a lot of our families, especially those with livestock, that's kind of the general consensus and the feeling. This is essentially a Super Bowl that's taking place each year. And some of our members will go on to state fair, but a majority will stay at that county level with their achievement day or their county fair. And so I think a big part of getting through this season somewhat unscathed is just remembering that this is what the families are feeling. And so if we give it that amount of attention, or at least kind of give it that same amount of respect or even reverence that they're feeling, things just tend to go a little bit better because there's that respect on both sides. We understand how important this is for them, and then they can understand that while we acknowledge that, there's still things that are out of our control that we just can't always fix. So we're going to talk a little bit about 4-H Online reports, and then at the end, we're going to go back to them to go specifically through what those look like and how we're going to do that, because I want to spend a little bit more time on animal ID. So 4-H Online reports are going to be your absolute best friend. So if you sign into 4-H Online, and then along the left side of our screen, all the way at the bottom, we get custom reports and standard reports. When you go to custom reports, we can create a report using anything we would like. And so we're going to go specifically through animal ID reports. And here's the best thing about these reports is that once you create one, it forever stays in 4-H Online. So if you create a custom report this year for exactly what you're looking at for livestock check-ins, next year, all you have to do is click on custom reports and then run that report, and it'll run it with all the new year's information. So once it's set up and correct, you never have to change it again. And so I currently have one that is set up that is shared. And so all of you can utilize it and use it. But you can also make a copy and change or tweak things if you'd like. Because I wanted to make sure you didn't have to start anything from scratch or brand new, because otherwise it takes a little bit of time. What you'll use these reports for really essentially is animal identification. And so the reports are set up with things we can have like animal identifier. Is that a tag? Is that a tattoo? Um, the age of the animal, birth date of the animal. It can give you breeds. And so you can have all these things ahead of time, and it makes it very easy to find missing information. And so I always target this particular Wednesday webinar on a Monday after the 15th. So our 4-H online system has locked for animal identification. Families cannot go in and change anything. They cannot add anything. Only you are able to do that at the county level. And so now we can run those reports in your county, and you can find all that missing information and be reaching out now between now and your county fair and achievement day, so that when we get to check in for county fair, everything is right, everything is correct. It's super fast, super smooth. Your superintendents aren't overwhelmed. And then when you promote them up to the state fair, they're also correct. And I know that doesn't seem maybe like a huge issue, or if you have fewer livestock, it doesn't seem like a big deal. But I would say on livestock check-in day at the state fair, I probably spend an additional 6 to 8 hours trying to find those problems or getting those corrected, contacting you back at the county office to see what animal actually showed up. Does it match the animal that came? And so when we can clear those things up ahead of time, it's just so much more beneficial for all of us. So we're going to go through those reports. If you have utilized a 4-H online report, if you just drop it in the chat what you've used it for in the past. It doesn't have to necessarily be livestock. If you use it for your photo releases, or for those that are in a program or a project area, you can create reports for any of those too. So it's kind of helpful to see how some people have used them. So when you run your report, this is essentially what it will look like. And so you can download it in either a PDF or an Excel format. I always go Excel because then I can change colors, highlight, make changes. Um, and so with these, we can go through and, like I said, find some of those instant mistakes or things that we go, oh, that's definitely not correct, or I need more information on it. And so I've actually pulled a statewide report that we'll look at the end. And we can step through and I can show some of those, like, oh, that's a problem area. One thing to remember, and I try to say this anytime we talk about livestock and livestock IDs, you are not responsible for being the absolute know-all end-all in your county. So if swine is not your first language, if you have no idea what it means when I say ear notches, or if I list off breeds and you just have no idea what that is, yes, it's great if you pick up that information as you go, but you're not responsible for being the expert. You have volunteers in your county and counties next door that absolutely live for this kind of information. And so when you're going through these ID reports, when you're setting up for county fairs and achievement days, there is nothing wrong with, like I did on this particular example of a report, remove youth names off the front and ask your volunteer to look over the report and see if anything jumps out at them as being incorrect. So people that know, I always go swine because I think it's the easiest example. If they say, yep, I have a Duroc registered, okay, and they said the color is a black pig. Some of us would jump right away and go, oh, that's a problem because Durocs are red and can only be red. So there might be an issue here. And so people that know that kind of livestock will pick up on those right away and can clear up those little mistakes a lot quicker than asking you to suddenly know what all the breeds are and what their traits are and their colors. And so you can pick out those mistakes. So that's where it's awesome if we can use our project leaders within the county, some of our volunteers, or even your superintendents. So when I talk about a livestock check-in, what is it that we are checking in? Couple things. When livestock are coming in for your achievement day or your county fair, it is highly recommended that you have kind of a structured check-in process. So when they're checking in, some of the things that we need from them are their animal ID, making sure that the ID that they put in 4-H online back in May 1st is in fact the ID that's in fair entry and that is in the animal that's in front of them. And so that helps making sure that they're in the right class at the right time. There's nothing more frustrating than a 4-H'er coming up to you after a spring yearling class has been judged and left the arena at the beef show, and they go, "Oh, I think mine was actually a spring yearling." Shoot. Okay. Yep. We'll figure out how to handle that in the moment. So we're verifying the animal IDs, making sure, yep, those are the animals, in fact, that they said they owned back on May 1st, and that there's no fishiness going on there. We're going to be double checking our show program. So are there drops? In what classes are those? So nobody's looking for animals that didn't come or don't exist. And then making sure we're in the right class. So if you're separated by breed, they're in the right breed or they're in the right division. It's crazy. Every year we always have a heifer that shows up that's actually supposed to be a steer or is in the steer class. That just one button got hit wrong in 4-H online and wasn't corrected right away. So we can make those adjustments well before the actual show is taking place. So when we get to the show, it just runs smoothly and everybody's in the right spot. And then any veterinary information that we may need. So like for poultry, huge deal that they have that palorum paperwork or their statement of origin before they're unloaded and put into their cages. So we think about that of, yep, they could all go into their pens, into their cages, and then we'll ask for that information. Well, if one of the birds happened to be sick, it really doesn't help us that they've now all been commingled. So like having that ahead of time as they're coming in before they unload, really pretty important. So when you're doing these livestock check-ins, what do you actually need to have on hand that we're going to prepare for? So one of the first things is that fair entry report. We're going to run that, and we can run it by species and separate it out. So we can hand our poultry report to our poultry superintendent, who's going to be checking off birds as they come in and that they're put in pens. So that way it doesn't need to be you standing out by the road checking all of these in, but we can separate that out into multiple volunteers. And then what does a good check-in look like? It's going to look very different from fair to fair. If you are a very small fair or achievement day, this may look like just families all together. So each family at a time, and you're checking in all species. Some it may look like if you have kind of a more staggered approach to when they're coming in and unloading and putting things in, each of your species superintendents might be checking in as they're unloading at a facility. In Pembina, the county that I was previously in, we had an actual like mapping system of where you're going to drive, where you're going to check in, and where you're going to drop off. And so I use that as an example. This certainly isn't how you have to do it or should do it. It's just what worked best for us. So we drew up like a very makeshift map of our fairgrounds, and we had designated time. So we knew all livestock are going to come in, say, between 9 a.m. and 2 p.m. on one particular day, the day before all of our shows kick off. And so we put in our procedures of all exhibitors must follow the protocol for checking into the fairgrounds, no exceptions. All livestock will enter through an approved gate entrance. Time and locations are specific and will be announced through our publications. Check into the fairgrounds will be demonstrated visually on the map of the grounds. And so we're going to use point A, point B, and point C. So all livestock carrying vehicles are going to come in through checkpoint A. Livestock vehicles are going to stop at B, and they're going to provide all their papers. So if the papers are in order, they go on to C. If they're missing anything, they would have to turn around. And we really put this into place back when we had PEDV, which was a swine disease that was kind of going rampant in the counties. And so we needed to have CVIs, veterinary inspection certificates. And so that way, before they even got on grounds, commingled with anything, we had all the fancy required paperwork stuff done and taken care of. And then at C, what we would do was anything that still needed to be checked, a veterinarian or someone would inspect the livestock, give them a clean bill of health. And then we'd also have like their large stall cards that they'd be hanging up at their stalls. grouped by family. So we'd pull out those stack of stall cards and go, okay, I see you've got 2 senior yearlings. Nope, you've only got 1. Okay. So we would write drop across the other. And so we had the drops all done, all completed well before any show took place, because we knew the drops. So then it was just changing or editing anything else that might be there. And then they could proceed to the barns and unload like crazy wherever they needed to because everything else was set. Like I said, this certainly is fairly formal, but not super formal. If you have an even larger fair, you may need more steps or processes. If you've got a smaller achievement day, maybe only a couple of these things might be helpful. But I highly encourage you to actually have kind of a written process that really helps not only you, but your families and those that are new that are coming in. If you can provide them with this is what you can expect, that's really kind of nice. So then we're going to talk about shows and class orders. So this is going to be generic, obvious knowledge for, I think, probably most of you. But if it's not, might be something you haven't thought of before. So when we're thinking about shows and class orders, when it comes to your livestock shows, I think most of our counties have the majority of their livestock shows on one day or on the same day. Some space it out over a couple of days, but for the most part, we're kind of packing things into a day or 2 days. And so the first thing we want to think about, of course, always is our exhibitors, our 4-Hers. So making sure shows don't routinely overlap or make it more difficult for them to exhibit. Don't exhaust them in the process of getting those exhibits done. This comes into mind, especially with like horse. There's a reason when we look at a horse show program, we don't have things like one class of Western, one class of English, one class of Western, one class of English. Because there are tack changes, there are outfit changes, there are all these things that take place that kind of take them in and out of that particular discipline. And so making sure that we provide ample time for those exhibitors to be presenting to the best of their ability. Our judges. This is, I think, becoming more and more of an issue as time goes on and as our numbers continue to rise. Having realistic expectations for our judges. So one county in particular that I worked with in the past, they had previously had all of their livestock shows on one day. The judge began at 7:30 a.m. and they ended roughly at 8 p.m. And they did every species the whole way through, and they couldn't understand why more and more judges were telling them no, that they didn't want to come, or they were asking for more outrageous fees for their time for judging. And so we had to sit down, we had to talk about that. I'm like, okay, if they're going to be on the road for a few hours beforehand, they're going to start judging at 7:30, usually give them a half an hour lunch break, and they're going to judge past into the evening and then also drive home. And you're expecting them to be an expert in all of those species. That's a really tough ask. And that's really kind of hard. Um, so we think about our judges in that they're humans too, and they're professionals. And so when you're asking your judges to judge, making that a higher priority of, is this a comfortable place for them to judge? Does our schedule allow them to truly be the professionals that they are? Or are we just asking them to kind of just whip through things as quickly as possible? And that goes the same for asking them to judge certain species. So if you have a beef judge, or a well-renowned beef judge, they're not going to be thrilled by it coming in as a request that maybe they're also going to judge dairy. Some might be able to, but that may not be their expertise. And so they don't want to put their reputation on the line or make them feel uncomfortable by judging something that they may not have enough experience in. So I know a lot of the times it's easy for us to ask like, oh, but can you also please judge this? We need to respect our judges when they say, no, that's just not my thing. I am a poultry judge. I do not like to judge rabbits at all. And I am asked almost every single time I'm approached to be a poultry judge, well, can't you also do the rabbits? I'm like, well, you can, but I'm going to give them all a blue because there's nothing cuter than a kid and a bunny. And that's not my forte. So every rabbit's getting a blue, the end. And so it doesn't make me a good judge. It doesn't make for a great experience for the kids to just all get a blue because I'm like, oh my gosh, your bunny is so soft. Um, and so just making sure we're respecting the professionalism that our judges are bringing. Biosecurity standpoint, if we have species that can almost kind of cross contaminate, making sure we have ample time between those shows or that we're not running them back to back in the arena. Um, things like which species are the dirtiest? You know? Swine can be a fairly messy species in the arena, especially if you've got lots of swine that'll be moving around. So sometimes it's nice to have them go last on your show day. So you have ample time for volunteers to help clean out the arena before the next species is going to come in the next morning. Um, and just so that it's a little bit cleaner and easier for them to handle. The schedule itself. If your beef show is the big one, that's going to take the most time, even though it may make sense because you can potentially get the same judge to do swine and sheep and beef. If your beef show is a long one, if that's really the highlight, that's where the majority of your members are, um, in order to give them the best experience possible, it potentially may need to move. Maybe we make sure that has the most time and doesn't conflict with some of the other shows, even though that might mean we need 2 judges instead. And then a big one that we don't always think about is tradition, because some things make complete sense and other traditions make absolutely no sense, but our volunteers and our public will live and die on that particular hill. So some things like if your county has a huge preference for showmanship has to be first or showmanship has to be last, what order that they go in. One of the biggest myths I hear every year is, yep, we should do senior showmanship first so that the juniors watch the seniors. I'm telling you, as a showman, nobody's watching. Those kids are not watching. If they are, they're cheering for older siblings, or just excited to watch. They're not taking notes. They're not extra preparing in that time. And so if we're deciding between, crowning our senior showman at the very end of the show, or if we're hoping that the juniors might be watching the seniors, it's kind of a toss up. But still, going through things like that, I know the year with PEDV, it was recommended that swine went last for all of our shows, just so other animals weren't walking through their mess. But that caused a major rift because the last thing that needs to be crowned champion at the Pembina County Fair has to be the market steer. Nothing else can be crowned last. The market steer has to be the last thing crowned. And so stepping through those traditions, just asking ahead of time, is there emotional ties to our schedule? Not necessarily logical ones, but is there emotional ones that I also need to step around to make sure that we're walking around those problems and not right into them? And so just a couple examples that you can think about for parameters within your own county. If most rabbit showmen are also at the horse show, probably a good option that we don't have those two overlapping. If the same judge is going to judge meat goats, and dairy, yep, then we should probably have them the same time. Moving species to and from show arenas, who's the furthest, who's going to take more time because they need to come the farthest. How about this one for a free bonus point for anybody? At noon, it's going to be 95 degrees. What 2 species should really not show at noon?
Rabbits and pigs.
Nice. Emily and Monica get bonus points for that one. Nice. Exactly. If they're watching the weather for things like heat index or just knowing it's going to be summer, that's always going to be the hottest time. Let's plan around that because we don't need to be putting animals or kids in danger. And then we talk about like the beef show. If the public loves the beef show, if that's really where you get your highest attendance and lots of people come out, having the beef show in the morning on a work day is a little trickier. Not as many people will get to attend or enjoy, and so sometimes we have to just think about how we can maybe adjust the schedule so, yep, we can allow for that public interaction and that public support. All right, so this one is a slide that doesn't really fit in the overall presentation, but every year when I provide it, somebody gets really happy that it's here. So I'll include it every year. What are we talking about when we're thinking about our show, when we're talking about our shows and lining those up? What on earth does it mean to be best of show? What is a champion drive? What is a class winner? I don't understand. And so I'm hoping, Megan, can we send out my slides after I'm done? Is that possible?
Yeah, I can do that, and I can put them
Perfect.
somewhere where they can find it later on too. So yeah.
Awesome. Okay.
Mhm.
We will do that too. So you can kind of, if this isn't your first language, you can clip this slide and take it. And so if we look at column A, where we've got, this is example of beef, our breeding spring heifer calves, fall heifer calves, yearling heifers, junior yearling heifers, senior yearling heifers, those are all classes. And so that is a class within the beef show. So all the exhibitors in those classes will receive a blue, red, or white ribbon. Every single one of them will receive a ribbon of some kind. And those animals are ranked. So the judge will put them in an order of, say, 1 through 5, 1 through 10, for however many are in the class. Next, they move up. And so now they're kind of within their division. And so the exhibitors that have received a blue ribbon and they placed first or second in their classes come back to the arena because now we need to crown that division winner. So like a breeding heifer would be a division, a summer yearling breeding heifer is a class. And so those first and second placers all come back so that the judge can select from all the first place animals in those classes who's going to be your division champion. And so that first place from each of those come back in, and then we have a grand champion. So that's where our grand champion heifer comes in. And then from the class where that first place heifer was chosen from, the second place comes into that class. And so the second place moves in, and then they're compared for the reserve champion. And so this is typically what's referred to as like a grand drive, or a finale is when we bring in all those first places and then our judges deciding from those first place in classes who's going to walk away with that bigger title, that big division, the bigger ribbon, the plaque, the trophy, whatever it is that your county chooses to give out. But I just tried to use beef because I know that's a pretty common example of, oh, yep, this is why we bring in all those first places again. That's why we tell them they're on deck, that they have to come back into the arena, even though they've already received their ribbon. And so we do these with slight variation across all the species, and they use different titles like Supreme Champion, Class Champion, Division Champion, Best of Show if you're in kind of rabbits or poultry. And so it takes a little while to learn the terminology, but this is it. Tyler's question, what if a judge tries to crown the animal second in class over the champion? Excellent question. There's a way that we can make sure that never happens. So judges are looking at tons of animals, one right after the other. And sometimes it does get a little bit mixed in their mind. So when we're doing these like champion drives, the easiest way to avoid this is you bring in only the first places. So in this example, we would have 5 first place animals in the arena. The winner is chosen because we know only those that are eligible are there, and then we'll bring in the second place, just so they're not out and mixed amongst, because I know that happens a lot, or a judge has to ask for clarification of, oh, yep, that's a first or a second. If you are going to have all the animals out there at one time, it never hurts to ask your judge to provide their selections ahead of their announcement. So whoever your record keeper is, your clerk that's at the table, or your announcer, they can write those down before the judge goes ahead and announces. So it's confidential, it's kept quiet, so you still get that exciting moment, but you can catch any of those, oh, whoops, they should not be out there, or hey, that's not how you placed them earlier. I just want to double check with you. But excellent question. So now we're going to go ahead and do what I call a 2-minute drill. And so this 2-minute drill, what I want to happen is we're going to give you 2 minutes, and using a sticky note, the chat box, whatever you'd like to, please take this time and write down all of the volunteers you think you're going to need to properly run your livestock show. And so we'll go ahead and go, and at 1:42, I'll bring us all back. But every single volunteer you think you're going to need. All right, I'll give you a 15-second wrap up. All right. So here's the list I can come up with right off the list. Oh, perfect. Bethany Thrun, recorder, announcer, ribbons, door organizer for the kids to go in, arena cleanup, and runner. Awesome, awesome list. So here's what I came with too is I'm gonna need 2 ring stewards. So these are the people actually in the arena. So in the swine arena, they're gonna have boards. They're gonna be my fight breaker uppers, my try to get the pigs in and out in a semi-organized manner. In beef, they're gonna help the kids line up. They're gonna help the judge with whatever pattern they want them to walk. I need an announcer that's gonna keep the show running smoothly. I need a recorder, somebody that's preferably gonna like sit with the announcer or will be in the arena with the judge, kind of marking things down, who's getting that blue, red, or white, who needs to come back for that champion drive we just talked about. We're gonna need a judge's assistant. So this could be the person that runs between your judge and the announcer's table, especially when it comes to horse. This is really common that our judge can kind of stay out in the arena and stay focused. And that assistant can do the things like running back and forth for quick questions to the crow's nest or grabbing bottles of water, any of those things to kind of help or assist with. Bethany nailed it. We need a ribbon hander outer. It's one of those things that you don't really think about because we brought the ribbons, but somebody's going to need to hand them out. And it's beneficial if that person knows the youth. So this is a great job for a parent or a volunteer that's been with the program, just because they'll be able to recognize those kids and hand out those ribbons a little bit easier. Said somebody to clean up the arena. Exactly. A pooper scooper. Somebody out there to make sure the arena stays clean and presentable as much as possible. A class liner upper. So who's back in the barn with the show program, making sure you've got all the kids in the right class in the right order that's coming out next into the arena. That gate person that's going to open and close the gate. Do a head count. When the last kid comes in, they can signal to the judge and the assistant, yep, your class is full. Go ahead, go forward with it, or hold up, we're waiting for somebody yet. And then that runner. So all of a sudden we're out of blue ribbons or we're out of red ribbons or the batteries have run out of the mic. Who's going to be able to kind of jump out of the stands and run up to the 4-H building office to get more AAA batteries so we can keep the mics working. So those are just some basic ones that we need every year, but sometimes we don't remember them until we're in the moment and going, Oh, shoot, I didn't designate anybody to go find us more ribbons. And then the last but not least, the oh no's. And so do us all a favor and don't do any panicking, because all that will do is nothing but make situations worse. We know that's the case, but if anybody has ever been through an oh no situation in their life, that does not stop the panicking. Knowing that panicking is going to make it worse won't stop a thing. We're still going to be nervous. We're still going to have to process, oh no, how are we going to make it through this and what are we going to do? Um, and so if you took the session that I had at spring conference, and then I'll probably do it once again throughout the year. It's a bird, it's a plane, it's brucellosis. When there is a disaster that happens, who's going to be your team? And that's really the only thing you can do to plan ahead of time for things like acts of God, fires, tornadoes, judges canceling. Who's going to be your team? And so, as soon as something happens, you can grab those people and talk through possible scenarios on how to fix things or how you're just going to mitigate what's going on. And so if we're concerned that, a judge might cancel or an animal might pass away, let's identify a couple of really good resourceful people within our 4-H program or within our ag society that we're working with, that in that moment it happens, I'm going to call these 4 people quickly up to the 4-H building or shoot them a text and say, all right, this is our situation. This is what I'm thinking. What do you all have feedback on? Because it never fails. Like if a judge doesn't show up, I'll use that as an example because I know a couple people mentioned that. There's somebody that knows somebody that's going to be able to maybe quickly leave work or drop out or make a run for it and get back to help. It's not 100% on you to know that Rolodex of emergency phone calls. That's why you've got these really good resourceful people to help you through. And so just knowing them ahead of time or having them on like a mini sticky note somewhere in your 4-H files of if an emergency, this is who I'm going to call. You can kind of have that phone tree ready to go. And then just a reminder for HiPath, because I've gotten plenty of questions on it so far. As HiPath cases are detected and recorded in North Dakota, Board of Animal Health has the final say on that. So we will always go with what their requirements are. So if we get to the point where there are too many active cases in a county and they say that's it, no more poultry exhibitions, we have a plan in place. And so again, they're the final authority. We have a guide in our 4-H files in 4-H online under the animal science resources with HiPath on what we will do, how you can prepare for a safer County Fair Achievement Day poultry show, and then what we will do in the event that poultry shows are canceled. And that is option 1, we can postpone and hope for better weather. If we've got a bunch of cases that are set to expire, but it's going to take us a week, you can talk with your council and say, all right, we're going to postpone. We'll have our poultry show outside of our County Fair Achievement Day, in 2 weeks. That's certainly an option. You can go with that. The other is a virtual show, and we have guides ready. We have examples ready. The folders are ready. That is all done and preset for you. So if your poultry show gets canceled the day before it's supposed to happen and you want to try this like virtual option instead, you give me an emergency call at midnight, it's set up, it's ready, we can have it rolling within a couple hours. And so we used it during COVID, we can use it again now, and that goes for any species if something were to come up. And then the last thing I want to remind you before we look at those livestock ID reports, no matter what anyone says, or no matter what you think and your mind tells you during county fair season, you have never ruined a child's career. You're not the dumbest person they have ever met, not even close. Your job is not destroying hopes and dreams of young people everywhere. And I use those specific examples because at least once in my career, all 3 of those things have been said to me. And if you're young and you're a newer agent, that is absolutely debilitating. And it takes a while to realize that they're coming from a place of just lots and lots of passion and excitement around our program. And it's certainly not meant at you, try not to take some of those things personally when people are upset. They're just upset at the situation itself. And it's because they're so passionate about what they're participating in and their experience that their kids are getting. So just keep yourself level and steady. Write down a little mantra. You're fantastic. You're hardworking. You're intelligent. It's why you're in these jobs. It's because you're fantastic at them. So things will always go wrong, but it is very rarely all your fault. And so when those situations do arise, don't hesitate to call on for help. So call out to other agents, call out to other support staff. My cell phone is permanently attached to me all summer long. So if there's something with livestock that comes up, you are not bothering me. You aren't pestering me. You aren't stepping outside of bounds. If you send me a text or call, please do so I can help kind of walk you through the situation or just be a sounding board to let you know you're doing the right thing. That's what I'm here for. So at this time, I'm going to stop sharing for a quick second so I can pull up that livestock ID report. If you have any additional questions on something that I just kind of glazed over or breezed over really quickly, go ahead and drop them in the chat and I promise I will answer them. I'm going to show you our livestock ID reports. And so this is where you'll find them. So when you log in into your home, it'll say your name and your county. We're going to scroll all the way to the bottom on the left and click custom reports. And I believe you should have, since I'm at the institution level, I can't be positive what I can see on your end, but I'm hoping there's a folder that would say like shared reports. And so I'm going to run with the current report I have set out, which is testing report animal ID. And so if I just click on the report and I put in my program year, your hierarchy should be set to your county, but we could pick any county. So let's see who's on that I can bug. Oh, okay. How about a nice pairing? We'll go with Cass. And then I am going to download my report. And I may need to stop for a quick second so I can share the right one. Oops. Sorry, I shared the wrong one. This is the one I wanted. So when you first get your report, this is what it will look like. And it's simply every animal that is registered in 4-H Online. And it's just alphabetized. And so what you can do however you want to with this report is you can sort. So we can sort that we want all the horse animal types at the top. So we're just going to, alphabetize sort, or maybe you'd like it by family. So you want to alphabetize by name. You can do it by breed, by birth date, whether they're owned or leased, however it fits best so that you get the information you need out of this report. And so, yep, it shows that there's a lot of information missing, but it makes sense when we look at some of the species that we're particularly looking at. And so like if we get to sheep, yep, Autumn has crossbred commercial sheep, a market ewe and a market wether. Oh, look, I have the scrapies tag and I have the individual tag. Awesome. Those are the two things I need. And so we can use the ID tables for county only and state fair, those blue and green tables that are in the ID folder. You can use those as kind of your checklist. And because at the end of those tables on the right side, it says 4-H Online requirements. And so you can just simply go down the list and check those off for that species. Yep, they have this. Yep, they have this. Oh no, we're definitely missing something. So like, I'll call out Becca for like market swine. We have a breed, awesome. We know it's owned, awesome. The ear notches are 1/8. Great, we have that. We have no tag information whatsoever. We also don't have a registration number. So that becomes a major problem. If they're supposed to be a purebred or a registered animal, we have to have registration. And the tag number is definitely not one of our 840 tags. So it may be a county only animal, but if it was thinking about going to state fair, it would definitely have missed that item. And so we can check those ahead of time. And so what I like to do with these reports, what I've been doing for about the last week here, is I go through our reports and I simply highlight problems. And so I've got them separated out by species. So I can grab and just kind of go through each one. And so like for swine, I went through and I go, okay, if they're green, they've got everything they need. And we don't have any problems whatsoever when they arrive at county fair. When they arrive at state fair, we have all the information we need. They are A-okay. Things that are red, we know are problematic. And so we have a cane that has market swine. Great. Crossbred. Okay, good to know. Owned. Yep. Tag, unknown. Nope, that's not going to work. Ear notch, also missing. Oh, that's a problem. And so we can look through some of these things and just immediately find those problems. We've got a lot of swine that have things that are or a lot of species across, or all animals across species. Tag numbers are 111, 333, 1234, 1234, 1234. We can recognize that those are probably not accurate. And so double checking with the families or saying, hey, we know that this was inputted. We also know it's not correct. So let's make sure we get the correct information. And so things like nowhere in our 4-H online do we ask for a name. But instead of putting in a tag number, we have Patty. We have one that is a question mark. So sometimes things like that will come through that we can check or fix right away. You know, ear notch that says 0000. Obviously problematic that we want to get those things fixed and changed on. And so when you run this report, it will look much more manageable because it's much smaller. It will be just for your county. But like for our state, I think we've got a total of, for swine this year, there are 650 that are going to be shown in North Dakota because that's what's in 4-H online. And so you can go through, if your county has 100 of those, or if you have 40 of those, you can go through and find those problems much quicker and just get those done ahead of time. And so this is kind of what your report looks like. So within that 4-H online report itself, I guess I should ask, has everybody made a report before? Or does this look like something that is brand new that you haven't created yet? Okay, nose. Okay, so I'm going to grab that one more time here. And so for these reports, I'm just going to go to my testing report again and click Edit Report. And so what you would do with this shared report is you'd make a copy of it, and then you can edit your copy and retitle it to anything you want. So it can be Cass County Animal ID, Ramsey County Animal Check-in, anything you'd like to name it. And then here's what's automatically set up for you. So the report columns, this is the information that you're looking for. So this is what you want. So I have it set name, first and last, animal type, sex, animal birth date, breed, owned or leased, scrapie, flock ID, tag, tattoo, ear notch, colors and marking, and registration number. Not all animals will all have every single piece of this information, but that way I only needed one report for all of my species to come through together. So I didn't have to do like multiple reports. Because once I sort them within Excel, then they're there anyways. You can also put in any filters. So if you want by age, like you only want to know those for seniors because you're going to do a showmanship report. If you want to see what clubs, so if your clubs do a lot of the stalling or the organizing of your barns, you can run it as a club report. So each club can have their own report. And then you can do any custom filters as well. So that you want them to be organized in a certain way, or you want only certain class or divisions or things like that. And then you can sort, you can group. I have not preset anything like that just because sometimes the custom like sort A through Z works better with Excel. So it just makes it a little bit easier. And then before you hit to actually download your report, you can see a preview of the report itself. And so like in total in North Dakota this year, why it's so important, why I hammer getting these into 4-H online is now we can go to our stakeholders, we can go to potential donors and sponsors and say, there are over 13,000 animals that can be exhibited in North Dakota 4-H this year. At the county level, at state, that's a huge number. When we're selling that there's a major interest in our animal science projects and our programs, and we need sponsorships for events and educational possibilities, there's that many in our system, which is really, really exciting. And so you can change and edit any of these filters in yours, and it's a pretty simple system. If you click edit, like for the columns, you're just moving items back and forth. So if because you're going to run this report and then you're going to reach out to those families that may have an issue or two that need clarified, maybe you want their phone number on the report, or maybe you want their email on the report, just so you have it handy and ready. So you can take any of that information. It's got all the member criteria, animal participation, any of those things that you can add into that report as well. And then you can resort them on what direction you want. But that is your custom report. So, okay, we are 2 minutes over, but I am here for if anybody has questions. I'm more than happy to stay on. Animal ID, anything, you just let me know, I'm here. Otherwise, thanks a million for jumping on. I know this is some very basic information for those of you that are like old hacks at this, or that you know exactly what's going on. But if not, hopefully there was a little something that might be helpful.
And thanks, Sam, so much for doing this for us. And so I'll go ahead and stop the recording now. So I know people have other things to do, but like Sam said, she'll stay on. And this is our last webinar Wednesday until August. And again, August the 13th with Brianna Kaiser talking about working with and engaging older youth, those high school age youth, and August the 27th with Rochelle Veteran with the volunteer handbook and learning how to use that. So thank you everybody for joining, and have a great rest of your week. Bye.